The story that you are about to hear is a compilation of documented true facts, featuring characters, events, or places that has played a role in shaping history. Please sit back and listen as I recite this narrative for you. Dutch Schultz was a New York City mobster who made a fortune in criminal activities during the 1920s and 1930s. Schultz rambled incoherently on his deathbed in 1935 about a $7 million fortune he had buried along Esopus Creek in upstate New York. That treasure is now estimated to be worth between $50 million and $150 million. Dutch Schultz was born Arthur Flegenheimer on August 6, 1901, to German Jewish immigrant parents. He quickly joined the Bronx Frog Hollow Gang, which gave him the nickname Dutch Schultz after a local gangster known for his violent, brutal ways. He was a criminal prodigy and a career criminal at the age of 25. He eventually earned a reputation as a particularly vicious criminal mastermind, employing extreme violence to enforce illegal operations such as bootlegging, extortion, and illegal lotteries that spanned New York and New Jersey. He is said to have killed 136 people in less than 10 years while illegally manufacturing and distributing bootleg liquor during Prohibition. It all started in 1919 when Prohibition was enacted. Schultz quickly recognized it as a lucrative business opportunity. He took control of the Bronx illegal beer supply, importing it from upstate breweries and using violent tactics to convince speakeasy owners to buy only from him. Gangsters such as Lucky Luciano, Al Capone, and Dutch Schultz amassed fortunes by illegally manufacturing and distributing bootleg liquor. Dutch Schultz's criminal empire was making more than $12 million per year at the end of the Roaring Twenties, which is about $100 million today. In 1931, New York's criminal underworld formed the Commission to unite various mafia gangs under one governing body. After the fall of Chicago's Al Capone in 1933, Hoover designated Schultz as public enemy number one, attracting the attention of prosecutor Thomas E. Dewey, who would later become governor of New York and wanted to prosecute Dutch Schultz for his illegal policy racket. Schultz, who had entered the illegal gambling market, was pursued by the federal government. He was also extorting restaurant owners and employees in New York, employing strong-arm tactics such as beatings and stink bomb attacks. Schultz, like Al Capone before him, was extremely vulnerable to the newly enacted federal income tax law. When he was indicted by a grand jury for income tax evasion, Schultz immediately took steps to protect his money and decided that he needed a safety net in case he was imprisoned. Dutch and his henchmen, including Lulu Rosencrantz and a man named Marty Crompierre, met at a hideaway in Connecticut. They stuffed a 2-foot by 3-foot steel-box waterproof safe or suitcase with bundles of $1,000 bills, negotiable World War I Liberty bonds, gold coins, diamonds, and other gems. The only key belonged to Dutch Schultz. That night, Dutch and Lulu traveled to Phoenicia, New York, a town Dutch was familiar with from his bootlegging days. Dutch allegedly swore Lulu to secrecy before carving an X into the trunk of a nearby tree to mark the location. He swore Lulu to secrecy, but Lulu couldn't keep quiet. He revealed the location of the treasure to his friend Marty Crompierre. Some claim that Lulu even drew a map for Marty. Even if Dutch buried his fortune near Phoenicia, it was in the thousands of acres of forest that comprised the Catskill Mountains, and despite hundreds of search parties, no one has found it. Rumors of the hidden treasure circulated throughout New York. However, Dutch had other issues. D.A. Thomas E. Dewey of Manhattan was determined to advance his political career by destroying Dutch Schultz and his illegal empire. However, his time on trial had had an impact on his business, so he reduced the commissions he paid to those running his rackets in order to fund what he referred to as the Arthur Flegenheimer Defense Fund. This clearly enraged many of his gang members, who held a mass protest meeting and declared a sort of strike. When Schultz refused to meet their demands, his cash flow dried up and the mobster was forced to back down. His actions, however, permanently harmed his relationship with both his own gang members and other associates. One of his top lieutenants soon met with Sicilian gangster Charlie Lucky Luciano, who intended to take over Schultz's operations. Schultz requested permission from the commission to assassinate Dewey, which they eventually denied, fearing that assassinating Dewey would spark public outrage and an aggressive campaign to shut down the rackets. When Schultz disobeyed them and attempted to murder Dewey, the commission ordered his death. Schultz, Rosenkrantz, Otto Berman, his accountant, and Abe Landau, his chief lieutenant, were having dinner at the Palace Chop House restaurant in Newark, New Jersey on October 23, 1935. Members of the crime syndicate gunned them down there. When the medics arrived and began treating him, they discovered that they didn't have any pain relief medication, so he was given brandy in an attempt to alleviate his suffering. He made a series of rambling and cryptic statements before his death, but he never named his assailant. Schultz mentioned the buried treasure several times. According to a transcript published on October 26, 1935 by the New York Times, a stenographer carefully recorded Schultz's statements from the gangster's bedside in the hours before his death. Schultz mentioned my collection of papers and said he had been shot over $5 million. But as he grew weaker, his rantings became increasingly lucid. Dutch Schultz died on October 24, 1935 at 8:35 p.m., nearly 22 hours after being shot. He was only 33 years old at that time. His bodyguard, Lulu Rosenkrantz, had died just hours before. There was only one man who knew where the treasure was hidden: Marty Crumpier. Marty was apprehended at a barber shop in New York City by two henchmen, who gunned him down and stole the map. Crumpier survived the attack, but without the map, he was unable to find the treasure. No one in Schultz's family ever claimed the vast fortune he must have possessed. Schultz never redeemed any of the World War I Liberty bonds he purchased. In a book about legendary gambler Nick the Greek written by Cy Rice, he stated that before his death, Dutch Schultz gave him a briefcase for safekeeping. Following Schultz's death, Nick the Greek opened the briefcase and discovered $5 million in $1,000 and $10,000 bills. Up until 1968, $1,000 and $10,000 billion bills were available to the general public and could be used at any store. Nick claims that he used this money to replenish his bankroll and gamble it away. It's possible that Dutch liquidated the treasure and gave it to Nick for safekeeping because he couldn't trust most of the men in his command. The mystery has been featured in films and documentaries in recent years. Psychics have been called in to assist in the recovery of the loot. Schultz's loot was estimated to be worth between $5 million and $9 million in 1935 dollars. Today, that fortune is worth between $100 and $150 million, depending on the cash-to-gold ratio, and the treasure has never been recovered.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to say that I am incredibly grateful that you took time out of your schedule to listen to my narration. This is Nikki of Twysted Mind, wishing you a great rest of your day. Salamat.